Hey folks, just thought I'd throw together another video. I had an interesting conversation with a buyer from me the other day about something that I thought was general information that most people knew, but this person had no idea, so I thought maybe I should do a video on it. There are many shapes of acoustic guitar. Two that you see the most are this guy right here, which is often referred to as a concert or auditorium, grand auditorium sometimes, but usually auditorium, or even a classic acoustic, many different names for this. And it's a slightly smaller bodied guitar than its bigger cousin, the dreadnought, named after a battleship, because it's the big boxy guitar. The biggest guitar you can get outside of a jumbo is a dreadnought. It's very rectangular, sometimes with slightly different cuts, and you'll see this one's got a cutaway. This is a dreadnought shaped guitar. It's very boxy, it's very square, it's very rectangular. I'll show you another dreadnought which you've seen, which is this James guitar. That's more of a traditional dreadnought. And you have variations on these. Slope-shouldered dreadnoughts are a sort of where they're sort of narrowing these top bouts a little bit for a variation on it, but not enough to make it a concert. Then you have, your Martin distinctions. You have an OM guitar, which is an orchestra model, or a double O or a triple O guitar, and those are getting into smaller concert models and parlor guitars, which are even smaller. But what I thought most people knew is that these guitars, being smaller bodied, doesn't necessarily mean that it's a smaller scale length. By scale length, I mean nut to saddle. On these two guitars they are both 25.5-inch scale length. Even though this looks smaller, it's still the same from nut to saddle. So in buying a concert guitar like this, you're not saving any room here. It's the same size guitar, it has the same neck profile, the same fretboard, the same nut width as the dreadnought that I just showed you. You're not saving any space here with this left hand. Where you are saving room by buying most concert guitars or orchestra model guitars is here. That's the body width. These have more of a waist, and they're easier to get around. These were once marketed, it seems sexist now, as ladies' guitars because it's easier to get around if you don't have long arms or not to sound crude, but if you have a large chest, it's hard to get around a dreadnought guitar. They're very big, boxy guitars. So the concert model saves you space here, not necessarily here, unless it's advertised as a smaller scale length. Most acoustic guitars with a concert or dreadnought are 41-inch. Sometimes you'll see one that is a 38 or smaller scale, where the scale length might be shortened a little bit to make it a shorter scale guitar. But you shouldn't assume that just because it's a smaller body shape that it's going to be a smaller guitar across the neck. In a lot of cases it won't be. You're not saving any room with your left hand. It's purely the body shape. And on this concert it's slightly thinner. It's all mahogany, Sapelli mahogany back and sides. It's a slightly thinner profile. Same specs as the dreadnought, but what they've made is smaller so you can get around it. So for a smaller adult or for a junior or somebody who just wants a smaller guitar, here, this way. These are great. There is a difference in sound. It's not pushing as much air, so these tend to be lower volume, sweeter guitars. They have a slightly sweeter sound, woodier sound perhaps. Whereas if you get a dreadnought of exactly the same guitar, and this is exactly the same, you're just gonna have. Sorry, the weather's being played with. it's got a lot more volume, it pushes more air, there's more resonating on it because it's a larger body guitar. So it tends to be, not always the case, but they tend to be louder and not as woody and as sweet as the smaller body guitars. But that really goes from brand to brand, build to build, model to model. It doesn't really necessarily, you can't rely on it being the case. I've played some really nice, sweet, resonant dreadnoughts and then some really boomy, loud concerts. So it doesn't always hold true, but in general, these tend to be a little bit louder, project a little bit more, there's more surface space, there's more resonating, and it pushes more air. But don't assume that a smaller body guitar is going to have a shorter fretboard, because in a lot of cases it won't. The scale length is exactly the same. The only difference is the box that they build around it. Unless you look for a smaller scale length guitar, and there are varying scale lengths. I mean, the 24 3/4 and the 25 1/2 are the ones you come across a lot. I've seen them bang on 25, I've seen 23.75, I've seen all kinds of scale lengths on guitars, going from tenor guitar to all different kinds of parlors and concerts and orchestral models, junior sizes, travel guitars, things like that. So there is a variation of scale length. Normally for a regular acoustic guitar, if it says travel or junior, it will be a smaller scale length, but if it's not built that way, it's normally going to be the same scale length as a regular acoustic. You've just got a smaller box to wrap around it. So I thought that was general knowledge, but I find myself explaining it more and more to folks, so I thought I'd do a video about it. Should I get a smaller body guitar? Or should I get a dreadnought, a bigger body guitar? Does it have to do with what size I am? It can, and often that is a comfort thing. But I know a lot of big blokes like me who are 6'4" who love parlor guitars and orchestral model guitars and triple O guitars and double O guitars. Parlor guitars are making a comeback. All kinds of companies now are putting out their very, very slim, smaller bodied parlors. Often with a smaller amount of frets, and so it becomes sort of a junior or travel guitar. But I know a lot of people who just like that sound, you know, whether it's porch blues or folk, fingerstyle, you name it. I mean, a lot of smaller guitars sound great, and as always, play them and see which you like. You don't necessarily have to choose a guitar on what size of person you are, although it helps if you're 4 foot something not to buy a jumbo. Or even a dreadnought. So I hope that's helpful to you. There are a lot of different shapes and sizes of guitars, but don't always presume that the scale length is going to be different between those sizes. Often the sizing has to do with the body shape and the dimensions of the bouts on the body. See you next time.